Good morning. This video is kind of going to walk you through the enzyme simulation, and you just use this to kind of help you if you're feeling confused about anything. So in this first part, it's giving you some background information, and then it's asking you to identify the different substances in the two different reactions. So going from starch to maltose is this first reaction, and then going from maltose to glucose is the second reaction. So you're going to fill in what the product, the substrate, which is just the enzyme word for reactants, so the substrate, the product, and then what the name of the enzyme is. And remember, enzymes are always going to end, not always, but usually end with the last three letters ASE. Then you're going to go to the enzyme simulation here. You'll click on the link, and you're kind of going to familiarize with the key, which is also above here. So it's just showing you what these different symbols mean. So starch is a gray circle, the amylase is the blue, like half moon, maltose is the orange circles, and so on and so forth. So what you're going to do is you're going to move the toggle so that there is only starch present in the amount of 2.5 units. And then you're going to run the simulation for 10 seconds. So if I pull up the simulation here, we're going to have 2.5 units of starch, and we aren't going to have anything else. Okay, so no maltose or no maltase. So only starch. All right, and then you're going to run the simulation for 10 seconds. So at 10 seconds, you can pause it. Okay? And so then what the questions are going to ask you, you're going to answer the questions. Okay? What happened to the starch? And you can look at the values on the simulation. So did the starch change? Is there more of it? Is there less of it? Did it stay the same? Did anything happen to it? Okay, so you will answer that question. Then what you're going to do is you're going to reset the simulation. You'll be now adding the amylase in there. And so you'll move the toggle and add 1 unit of amylase. So again, we'll come back up here. We want to reset this. We're going to go up to the top. We want starch at 2.5, but now we want 1 unit of amylase. So you'll move this over here. Okay, and then you're going to run the simulation again for 10 seconds. Okay, and so when 10 seconds comes, you'll pause it. And then again, you're going to look to see what happened. What happened to the amount of starch? Starch is the gray line. What happened to the amount of maltose that was there? What happened to the amount of glucose? And so then you're going to answer these questions. Okay, so as you go through, you're going to change the different units on top, run the simulations, and then you're going to write down what happened. Did the amount of these different things, of the starch, of the maltose, of the glucose, did it increase? Did it decrease? Why do you think that happened? Okay. And so then when you're finished with that one, you're going to test the effect of temperature. So what happens to an enzyme reaction if it's cold, if it's at room temperature, if it's very warm? And you're going to do the same thing, except you're going to also be changing the temperature toggles. So when you go back up here, when you get to the temperature ones, you're going to change the temperature here to whatever it tells you to change it to. All right. And then the last one, you're going to be changing the pH. And so ultimately what your goal is to figure out in the first part what happens when you don't have an enzyme present. Okay, so if amylase or maltase isn't present, how does that affect whether or not starch can become maltose, whether or not maltose can affect glucose? The second experiment is going to look at how is this reaction affected based on temperature. If it's too warm, if it's too cold, if it's body temperature, how does it change whether or not this reaction can continue? And then the third one will be looking at pH. If your body is too acidic or if it's too basic, how does this determine whether or not this reaction can take place? So hopefully this explains the enzyme lab. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But like I said, just follow the instructions on this sheet and then answer the questions as you go, kind of looking at the different levels and the different graphs.